all sorts of regulations, and I've never really considered them too onerous in the past. Like the chicken one is, you can slaughter chickens on your own farm as long as it's under 1,000 birds, and 1,000 birds is a lot of chicken, and I'm not really interested in being that big.
One of the first things we went ahead and did was, we got a business license through the town. And some people that we've talked to, other people in the area that, farm, they're like, well, why'd you do that? Why don't you just do it? And you're trying to think of, having our bases covered, for the future.
Right. And that's all sort of like really, regulation that's trying to address the change of a community from farming to like suburban housing developments. And it's hard. They just forget how to deal with farms altogether.
In an area like this where it's so close to an urban setting and there's so much residential pressure, zoning could change any time. We got that business license, and here's the first form we filled out that said we're Midnight Meadow Farm, type of business agricultural. You gave us the license, grandfathered.
When we moved to Scarborough, after we already moved here and had this plan to raise pigs, we learned that Scarborough had an ordinance against pigs at all. And that was sort of left over from the days when there were a couple of bigger pig farms in town. And when those farms went out of business, I guess the town put an ordinance in place that said that no more pigs, or no more piggeries. And so that's been kind of an issue.
Because there's not a real clear definition of what a piggery is.
Right.
They tried to have like an ordinance meeting to decide what that meant, and they tabled it because they couldn't make a decision.
The people who make these decisions don't know about farms really. They don't know that you can have a sow, and then if she's gonna give birth overnight, you have 15 pigs. You go from 1 to 15 overnight. So if you have an ordinance in place that says no more than 7 pigs, that's basically saying that you can't have any adult pigs or a breeding pair.
Doing this in this kind of area, it's like the land costs so much more. The tax has got so much more. But you're so much closer to people, and you're so much closer to your market.
The more ways it gets out there to people really start to think about it. They start to take the idea seriously, and you don't expect that people are going to all of a sudden go oh, that's it, we're not shopping at the grocery store, we're going to eat all local, because it's a pretty big leap. But people start to think about it and incorporate a few more local ingredients.
And the hard thing too, the infrastructure isn't there. We're not in a situation where everyone could just say, well, I'm just going to do everything totally local, because there's no way that the farmers can support it.
Right.
Because their land became more profitable as a housing development over the years.
You could own a house in rural farmland and be completely forbidden from doing any sort of livestock. And sometimes, depending on neighborhood associations, sometimes you can't even have a garden, a vegetable garden.
Obviously this is just my opinion. I don't know firsthand, but I'm sure as far as the farmers go, they're going to want as many people as they can get involved in their process of buying things local, but at the same time, they realize that there's only so much they can do.
It's really beginning to approach that point of the right to raise food, It's, to us, it feels like a real infringement on a basic human right, the human right to be fed, to know where your food comes from.
Because really, the way that people in this country fed themselves and ate for generations and generations and generations, we really focused around local, seasonal food, and it's really only been in the past couple generations that things have gone horribly awry.
I don't think anyone really talks about this issue in terms of rights, or basic human rights.
There weren't even grocery stores until the 1920s. You just ate what was there and what you could get locally, and you might have had a few things that were special, like coffee or spices, or other than that, that's how you ate.
I also think that we're both, John and I, a little bit fatalistic. So when things really start to change in terms of, and you already hear it in the news in terms of food prices and access to food, and it's only going to become a bigger issue to have access to local food and the ability to raise it yourself.
I think often people just don't think about it, or they just only look at the price, and don't really think about the whole overall cost. I mean, even if you're buying something that maybe costs $1 less, if it came all the way from California on the truck and wasted a whole lot of gas and polluted the air and polluted the water, you know, I mean, I think that the end cost really ends up being more.
If you look at what people are paying at the grocery store, you know, for just conventionally produced food that was grown in New Mexico or Chile, you know, or somewhere else, you know, the price that it's costing them to grow it, to ship it, to handle it, to mark it up, you know, versus what I can do right here without the shipping, the handling, the 10 different people getting a cut from it, the price gap is closing.
Yeah, and that's definitely been a nice part of it too, is the economic impact of it is that, yeah, I mean, all the money is just staying right here. People are aware of it. I mean, the media and other people are, you know, it's a topic of conversation and something to write about or report on. Whereas,
Yeah, and it's only a matter of time before local just becomes a marketing. I mean, at some point it's going to become a marketing tool. People are going to catch, you know, sellers are going to catch on to the fact that people are on the local craze, and then they're going to start marketing things in their stores as local.
My sister surprised me too.
Uh-huh.
My sister doesn't eat any red meat, and I thought she would never eat our chickens or anything like that. And she came here and she's like, "They're so beautiful and clean." And next thing you know, she's paying us more than we were asking for.
But that was part of the whole reason why when we started the process that I started doing the blog, because I wanted to tell people where they could get food. Because it did take a bit of effort to figure out where we could get everything and get everything consistently.
All of our produce and everything we do organically.
Yeah.
It takes a little more time, but we're not sinking ridiculous amounts of money into synthetic fertilizers. We're not sinking a bunch of money into machinery. We're not sinking a bunch of money into, you know, a lot of things. We spend a lot of money on certified organic seed.
Right.
You know, but aside from that, you know, all of, you know, all of our, you know, limited fertilizers are what we have to do, all organically based. You know, it's all through composting and, you know, nutrient recycling. You know, we know what a seed packet costs. We know what 50 pounds of that vegetable goes for. You know,
Right.
we've done the math. Like, okay, it's gonna work, so now we're ready.
And I think being a mom changes people too. Like me being pregnant with them, I was so careful with what I put in my body, and nitrates and processed foods, and I was such a mess knowing that I was growing a life inside me, that everything that I put in my body was very important to me. So that's really when things started changing for me.
When we talked about stopping, I got like anxiety over it. I was like, it's easier to keep going than to stop, because once you've had that much control over where your food comes from, the thought of going to the grocery store and buying some shiny, waxy apple from some other state, it's kind of horrifying. You know, you get to the point where you know where everything in your kitchen came from, where it grew, pretty much who grew it.
in a lot of cases.
In a lot of cases, and then to kind of go to the grocery store becomes a whole different, anonymous, weird, panicky, almost experience.